Alright, so in the last video, Lee got our very simple level all set up, and he got all of the materials fixed as far as the textures that were supposed to be on them, or well, single texture. And in that process, Lee discovered that he had left one of the textures out. So in this video, Lee's going to get that texture in place so that we can put a little bit more life into our simple level with a normal map. So Lee, take it away.
Okay, well, I'm going to get our texture, so let me close some stuff out here. I'm going to leave the materials folder over because we're going to use it here in a sec. But I'm going to go ahead and find our texture. I've actually found it, moved it, and put it in the source assets. It's actually called checker bump. So I'm going to take it from here. I'm going to drag it in, put it inside the textures folder. That's going to cause the import. It's going to import. Now I'm going to minimize this. I know I promised you we were going to fix this. We'll get to it in the next video. I promise we'll get something here.
He's talking about the flat shading,
yep,
no lighting.
Yep, the dark window. But with that said, let's get back to the checker. This particular file is called checker bump, and we're actually going to turn it into a bump map. Same steps as we did last time, but this time with the right texture. So we're going to go into texture type, we're going to convert it to a normal map. I'm going to accept the defaults, and then I'm just going to hit apply. So now we're going to get a bump map closer to what I expected to see. With the bump map, here, let me go back real quick so you can see it, and I can explain a little bit more. With the bump map, when you're designing it, you're going to generate from grayscale. White color is going to be raised areas, and darker colors are going to be sunken in areas. Now, if this was in higher res and you actually saw it as native resolution, you would see these grays are actually gradients going down. You can't really see it in this low res. So it's actually almost like a bevel going into the center, with the darkest color being right down the middle of each of these gray lines.
And I just want to throw a quick question out for you real quick. Now, in the last video, when you were going to set this up, you had duplicated off the checker. Were you going to duplicate this one and utilize it also for a spec map, or were you just going to use this just for bump?
I was just going to use this for bump.
Good enough. I'm just being curious, that's all.
There isn't really a traditional spec map that you can take a file and drag in.
Okay.
The way spec works is it's actually the alpha channel of your diffuse.
Oh, well, there you go.
So now with that said, what we're going to do is we're going to switch this back into the normal, hit apply, and we're back to where we were. So now we have our bump map. Now what I'm going to do is come back to each of our materials, and one at a time I'm going to switch them from diffuse to bump specular.
For the shader type?
Right. And as you can see here where it says base, your base color is RGB. So that's just saying it's taking the color cues from the RGB channels from here. Now your glossiness channel is alpha.
Gotcha.
So that's where your spec map comes into play.
Very cool.
And we also have our normal map, which we just created, so we can take it here, drag it and drop it, and now we've got our normal. Now we've got an interesting little problem here. If you see, here's our tile patterns. They're real small little checkers, but our bump map is quite large. The reason that is we haven't matched the tiling up yet. So we have to match the tiling of our normal map to be the same as our diffuse map. So I'm just going to come in here real quick, and I'm going to change the tiling, and we get something that looks a little bit better. Now, one of the things that we could do here is we can actually hit your mouse button and rotate around and pan our object around if we actually have more detail to look at. Now we have a shininess slider, so that can affect how glossy or kind of evenly lit our texture is. I'm going to actually bump it up about 3/4 of a way. And you're not going to see anything in your preview window or this window down here, which we get to, I promise, is because we have no lights in our scene.
Right.
So the only place we can actually see what's going on here right now is this preview window right here.
Okay.
So basically this is the same thing we're going to do for all of our materials. It's really simple. Nothing fancy, but I just wanted to put a normal map on our textures because it is also going to become prevalent in a future video when we start talking about rendering paths and how lighting is all calculated for materials. And at that point, you'll see why we've put this in. So it's just doing the same thing over and over again. This is where being able to select multiple materials and do the same thing on all of them would have been a very nice thing.
Oh, we're definitely seeing a change up in your perspective scene view now.
Right, but not quite as much as you will once we get the a light in
Once
there.
we get something in there to really affect specularity and all, the glossiness.
So, and let's see, bumps back about there, and 10 and 10. Whoops. And keep doing this in different orders just to keep things interesting. Doesn't really matter in what order you set the settings as long as you get all the settings dialed in eventually. So now this will be the last one. Our funky wall proportions 80 by 4. And now we've got them in. Alright, as you can see, we've got something here. It doesn't look the greatest, but it will look a lot better once we start getting lights in here. So with that, that's actually pretty much all we needed to do was to finish up this texture, because I had left off the normal map. So now we've got it all in place. All of them are there. And that should be it. Anything else you want to cover?
No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously you're not going to rely on normal maps existing by the method you've demonstrated here for every scene. I mean, you are able to produce your normal maps from other applications like Photoshop or even 3D packages that have the ability to create normal maps as well, right?
Yes, most. I know for a fact Maya does. I'm sure most of the other major products out there can generate their own normal maps. I know NVIDIA for a fact has a tool for generating normal maps that you can plug into Photoshop to generate them.
Exactly.
There are a few third-party applications that you can buy and generates them as well. I know Crazy Bump is a fairly popular one. Used to be free, but I believe he now charges for it.
Gotcha.
But it's a really, really phenomenal tool for generating bump maps.
Yeah, I just wanted to toss that out for anyone that's a beginner following along with this, and perhaps they haven't worked with normal maps in the past, just so that they don't, get themselves with the mindset that, well, I have to just make a texture and I have to bring it into here and I have to convert it over to a normal map this way.
Well, the only reason I did it this way is, again, if you look at it, it's an extremely simple pattern.
Absolutely.
So that's why I did it. But when you start getting to rock faces, cliff faces, and really, really complex type of geometry, you definitely don't want to be doing hand painting of your normal maps.
Yeah.
So, but with that, that'll be it for this video, and we'll see you guys on the next video.
All right.